Hey guys, today I bring you an unbelievable story that will leave you with your mouth open. Let's learn about the moving story of Thorn Ashbrook, a young man who survived a lightning strike and, during his near-death experience, had an encounter with Jesus and received an impactful revelation about the future of humanity. But before we start, I want to know, where are you watching this video from? Comment below what city you are from. And of course, if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, take the opportunity now to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. My name is Thorn Ashbrook, and what I'm about to tell you changed my life forever. I grew up in Buffalo, a small town in Wyoming, where the horizon stretches as far as the eye can see and the sky seems to touch the earth. I come from a simple family, rural people who always worked hard to survive. From an early age, I learned the value of work and responsibility. At 16, I was already dividing my time between studying in the city and working on our small property on weekends and vacations. Our main source of income was a modest flock of sheep, and each family member had their role in keeping everything going. Country life is not easy, but it has its rewards. The fresh morning air, the sound of birds at dawn, the feeling of freedom when riding through open fields, these are things no money can buy. But we also faced constant challenges: bad weather, financial difficulties, distance from everything. During the week I stayed in the school dormitory in the city. It was tiring but necessary. Education has always been valued in my family, even if it meant some sacrifices. On weekends I returned home, eager to see my family and help with whatever was needed. My younger brother Eli was my inseparable companion. At 14 years old, he was full of energy and curiosity. Whenever I returned home, he was there waiting to tell me the week's news and to accompany me on my field chores. I've never been a particularly religious or spiritual person. Of course, we went to church on Sundays like most families in the area, but it wasn't something that occupied my thoughts much on a daily basis. I was more concerned with the practical things in life: helping my family, doing well at school, planning my future. If someone had told me back then that I would have an experience that would completely change my outlook on life and death, I probably would have laughed. After all, what could a country boy like me know about the mysteries of the beyond? But life has a funny way of surprising us. And it was on an ordinary afternoon doing a routine task that my world turned upside down. What happened that day, and in the moments that followed, is etched in my memory with a clarity that time has not been able to erase. This is my story, a story about life and death, about the visible and the invisible, about what really matters when we are faced with eternity. I am not a preacher, nor a writer, nor anyone special. I'm just an ordinary man who had a chance to glimpse something beyond this life and who came back to tell it. Get ready for a journey that challenges everything we think we know about reality. A journey that began in a field in Wyoming, but that took me far beyond the limits of our world. It was a summer afternoon like so many others in Buffalo. The air was heavy, thick with the promise of rain. Eli and I had gone out to mow grass for the sheep, a routine task we had done hundreds of times before. The sky was cloudy, but we didn't pay much attention. After all, summer storms were common here. As we worked, Eli chattered excitedly about his plans for the future. He dreamed of being a veterinarian, taking care of the region's animals. I listened to him with a smile, remembering how I also had big dreams at that age. It was then that I noticed the change in the air. The wind, which had previously been a gentle breeze, began to pick up strength. The clouds, once gray and scattered, now gathered on the horizon, dark and threatening. I felt a shiver run down my spine, a feeling that something wasn't right. "Eli," I called, "I think we better get back. This storm is coming faster than I thought." My brother looked up at the sky, his eyes widening as he saw the approaching darkness. "But already? We've barely started." "We can't risk it," I replied, already collecting our tools. "Come on, quickly." We started walking hurriedly back home, but the storm seemed to have a life of its own. The wind howled around us, whipping leaves and dust in our faces. The first drops of rain began to fall thick and heavy. Suddenly, a flash lit up the entire sky. followed almost instantly by a deafening thunder. Eli screamed, scared, and I pulled him close. We were in the middle of an open field, exposed and vulnerable. "There," I shouted, pointing to a large lone tree a few feet away. "Let's take shelter there." We ran like we had never run before. The rain was now falling in torrents, soaking our clothes in seconds. We arrived panting at the tree, leaning against its thick trunk, seeking some protection from the fury of the elements. The world around us seemed to have gone crazy. Lightning streaked across the sky in all directions. The noise of thunder was so intense that it made the ground shake beneath our feet. I hugged Eli tightly, trying to protect him, and at the same time, find some comfort in his presence. That's when it happened. A flash brighter than all the others. A light so intense it seemed to tear the very fabric of reality. For a moment, I had the impression that time had stopped. I saw, as if in slow motion, lightning descending from the heavens, coming directly towards us. There was no time to think, to react, to be afraid. One moment I was there, hugging my brother under the tree. In the next instant I felt as if every cell in my body was on fire. An indescribable pain shot through me, and then, nothing. The world around me disappeared. The storm, the tree, the field. Everything dissolved into absolute darkness. I didn't know if I was alive or dead, if my eyes were open or closed. Everything I knew, everything I was, seemed to have been erased in the blink of an eye. At that moment, suspended between life and death, I had no idea that my journey was just beginning, that what came next would forever change my understanding of life, death, and everything that lies beyond. I can't say how long I stayed in that state of total darkness. It could have been seconds, hours, or even days. In that void, time seemed to have no meaning. But suddenly I began to have a strange feeling, as if I were waking up from a deep sleep. Slowly, I opened my eyes, or at least I thought I had. At first I thought I was still in the dark, but I slowly realized I was in a different environment. It was a large hall, with walls and floor made of smooth black stone. There was no furniture, no decoration, just a vast empty space. The strangest thing was the lighting. There was no visible light source, but I could see everything clearly. It was as if the darkness itself gave off a soft light, allowing me to see every detail of that unusual place. I stood up, surprised to realize that I didn't feel any pain. In fact, I felt lighter, as if my body was weightless. It was then that I noticed something even more surprising. I could see through my own hands. It was as if my body was made of a dense yet translucent fog. "Eli?" I called, suddenly remembering my brother. My voice echoed through the empty hall, but there was no response. I started walking, or rather, floating through space. Every movement felt natural and effortless. As I explored the room, I tried to understand where I was and what had happened. Was I dead? Was this what the afterlife was like? It was then that I saw a familiar figure lying on the ground not far from me. "Eli!" I exclaimed, moving quickly towards him. My brother was there, looking as ethereal as me, his eyes closed as if he were sleeping. I knelt down beside him, hesitant to touch him. "Eli, wake up," I whispered. Slowly his eyes opened, confusion evident in his gaze. "Thorn?" he murmured, his voice sounding strangely clear in that environment. "Where are we? What happened?" I tried to explain, but realized I had no answers. "I don't know, Eli. The last thing I remember is the lightning hitting the tree where we were standing." Eli stood up, looking around with a mix of fascination and fear. "Are we dead?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But whatever this is, we're in this together." It was at that moment that I noticed something even stranger. Although Eli was speaking, his lips were not moving. It was as if we could communicate directly, mind to mind. I tried responding in kind, focusing my thoughts on him, and to my surprise, it worked. "Do you hear that?" I asked mentally. Eli nodded, his eyes widening in surprise. "How is it possible?" he asked, his mental voice full of astonishment. "I have no idea," I replied, equally amazed. "But it seems the rules here are different." We explored the room together, our minds connected in a way I had never experienced before. We could feel each other's thoughts and emotions, an intimacy that went beyond anything we had ever experienced as brothers. Despite the strangeness of the situation, I didn't feel scared. There was a deep peace in that place, a feeling that no matter what had happened, we were safe. It was as if all the anxiety and worry of earthly life had been left behind, leaving only a quiet curiosity about what would come next. As we walked through the room, we noticed that one of the walls was starting to glow softly. The light gradually increased, like a sunrise in slow motion. Eli and I looked at each other, a silent question passing between us. Should we move toward the light? Speechless, we decided to move forward. As we got closer, the wall seemed to dissolve, revealing a landscape beyond that defied anything I had ever seen or imagined. It was the beginning of a journey that would forever change our understanding of life, death, and the universe itself. As we passed through the wall of light, it was as if we had entered another world entirely. The dark hall was behind us, and we found ourselves in a place of indescribable beauty. It was a vast valley, surrounded by majestic mountains that rose to unimaginable heights. The sky, well, calling it heaven seems inappropriate. It was as if the air itself was made of golden light, soft and comforting. The grass beneath our feet, if we still had feet like that, was a vibrant green, dotted with flowers of colors I had never seen before. Some seemed to emit their own light, pulsing gently as if they were alive and conscious. "Thorn, do you see this?" Eli's mental voice echoed in my mind, full of awe and awe. "Yes, I am, little brother," I replied, equally amazed. "I've never seen anything like it." The air was filled with soft music, as if the wind itself was singing an ethereal melody. It was impossible to identify the source of the sound. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. As we walked through the valley, I noticed something even more extraordinary. Little spheres of light floated around us, some the size of fireflies, others larger than a football. They moved with grace, sometimes passing through us, leaving a feeling of warmth and well-being. "What are these lights?" Eli asked, reaching out his hand as if he wanted to touch one of them. The moment his touch met the sphere of light, a wave of emotions and images flooded my mind. And Eli's too, I realized. It was as if that small sphere contained a lifetime of memories and feelings. I think they're souls," I mentally whispered to Eli, surprised by how certain I felt in that statement. Eli nodded slowly, his eyes, or whatever they were in that form, wide with astonishment. "It's like we can feel everything they felt," he said. As we advanced through the valley, more and more of these luminous orbs appeared. Some seemed to watch us curiously, others simply passed us on their way to some unknown destination. Each one brought with it a unique energy, an essence that I could only describe as the quintessence of a life. Time seemed to not exist in that place. There was no sun visible, but the golden light that permeated everything never diminished. We didn't feel hungry, nor tired, just a deep peace and an insatiable curiosity about this new world in which we found ourselves. At one point we arrived at a crystal-clear lake. Its waters were such a pure blue that it seemed unreal. As we approached the shore, I saw our reflections for the first time since arriving at this place. It was a shock. Our forms were vaguely human, but made entirely of light. It was as if we were made of the same substance as the luminous spheres around us, only denser, more defined. We could see through ourselves, and in the center of our chests a brighter light shone, pulsing like a heart. "Are we light?" Eli asked, his mental voice full of wonder. "It seems so," I replied, equally amazed. "I guess this is what souls look like when they're not in a physical body." We stood there for a while, contemplating our new bodies and the incredible world around us. It was hard to believe that just a short time ago, we were in a field in Wyoming, mowing grass for the sheep. That reality seemed so distant now, almost like a dream. It was then that we noticed something new. A presence that approached, different from the spheres of light we had seen until then. It was bigger, brighter, and emanated an energy that made the entire valley seem to vibrate in response. Eli and I turned at the same time, our eyes fixed on the majestic figure approaching us. It was a being of pure light, so bright that if we were in our physical bodies we would probably have to look away. But in this form, we could look directly at him without discomfort. The being had a vaguely humanoid shape, but its wings of light extended in all directions as if they were made of pure energy. His presence brought a sense of peace and reverence that was almost overwhelming. "An angel," Eli whispered into my mind, his voice full of wonder. I couldn't disagree. Everything I had ever heard or imagined about angels seemed to pale in comparison to the reality before us. The being came closer, and it felt as if the entire valley was holding its breath in anticipation. When the angel spoke, it was not with words, but with thoughts and emotions that flowed directly into our minds. The message was clear, and at the same time, complex, full of nuances that I knew would take a lifetime to fully understand. "Welcome," said the angel, his voice resonating in every fiber of our being. "You guys have had quite a journey to get here." Eli and I looked at each other, a mix of emotions passing between us. Fear, wonder, curiosity, and most of all, an overwhelming sense that we were about to learn truths that would change everything we thought we knew about life and death. The angel came closer, his light enveloping us like a cosmic hug. "You have questions," he said, not as a question but as a statement. "And I'm here to guide you." At that moment, I knew our journey through the Valley of Peace was just beginning, and that the revelations that were to come would be beyond anything we could imagine. The angel hovered before us, his presence so overwhelming that it was difficult to form coherent thoughts. It was like being in front of a star, but a conscious, intelligent, and incredibly ancient star. I felt as if all the wisdom of the universe was concentrated in that being. "You have passed through the veil between the worlds," the angel communicated, his thoughts flowing to us like a gentle but powerful current. "Not all who make this journey return." A shiver ran through my being upon hearing those words. Return? So was there a possibility of us returning? Before he could formulate the question, the angel continued, "You are on the threshold, Thorn and Eli. Not quite here, not quite there. It is a place of decisions, of deep reflection." Eli, who until then had been in reverent silence, finally found his voice. "Did we die?" he asked, his mind conveying a mix of fear and curiosity. The angel emitted something I can only describe as a cosmic smile. I saw nothing change in his appearance, but I felt the warmth and compassion of this gesture in every fiber of my being. "Death, as you understand it, is just a transition," the angel explained. "You are experiencing a fraction of what lies beyond the physical veil, but your journey is not yet complete." Thousands of questions flooded my mind. About life, death, the purpose of everything. It was as if every search for meaning I had ever had in life was culminating in this moment. The angel, sensing my confusion and longing for answers, extended what appeared to be hands of pure light toward us. "Come," he said. "There's something you guys need to see." Without hesitation, Eli and I let ourselves be enveloped by the angel's light. It was an indescribable feeling, like diving into an ocean of pure love and knowledge. Images, sensations, and deep understandings flowed through us. I saw the vastness of the universe, the interconnectedness of all things, from the smallest subatomic particle to the largest galaxies. I understood at that moment that reality was infinitely more complex and wonderful than I had ever imagined. I saw that every life, every choice, every moment had a purpose in the great fabric of existence. When the vision ended, I felt transformed. It was as if he had lived 1,000 lives in an instant, learned lessons that would take eternities to fully understand. The angel watched us with what I can only describe as infinite tenderness. "You only saw a glimpse," he said. "There is much more than you can imagine." It was then that a sudden realization hit me. I looked at Eli and saw in his eyes that he had come to the same conclusion. "It's not our time," I said, not as a question, but as a statement. The angel nodded, or at least that was the impression I got. "You have a choice to make," he said. "You can continue your journey, explore the realms beyond this one, or you can return." Eli moved closer to me, his essence mingling with mine in a way that went beyond any physical embrace we had ever shared. "Thorn," he said, his mental voice full of emotion, "I want to stay. It's so perfect here." I understood what he meant. The peace, the love, the understanding we felt in this place were indescribable. The idea of leaving all of this behind, of returning to the pain and limitations of the physical world, was almost unbearable. But then I thought about our parents, our family, in the pain they would feel if we didn't return. And more than that, I felt that there was something unfinished, a mission that we still needed to accomplish. The angel, realizing our dilemma, spoke again. "The choice is individual. Each soul must decide its own path." I looked at Eli, feeling a love for my brother so deep that it seemed to transcend anything I had ever experienced. "I need to go back," I told him. "There are things I still need to do." Eli nodded, understanding. I could feel his reluctance, but also his acceptance. "I know," he replied. "I think I need to go back too, but it's so hard to leave all this." The angel enveloped us again with his light. "Your journey is not over yet," he said, "but take with you what you learned here. The love, the compassion, the understanding of the interconnectedness of all things." I felt immense gratitude for this experience, for this glimpse of the beyond. I knew that no matter what happened next, my life would never be the same. "We're ready," I told the angel, feeling Eli nod beside me. The angel nodded once again. "Then it's time for you to return. But remember, what you saw here is just the beginning. There is so much more to learn, to experience, to understand." With those words, I felt a gentle force pulling us back. The valley of peace began to dissolve around us, colors mixing in a swirl of light. The last thing I saw was the angel, his light shining like a beacon guiding us back to the world we knew. And then, darkness. But this time, it wasn't the emptiness I experienced before. It was a darkness full of possibilities, of promises, a darkness that preceded awakening. The transition back into the physical world was like diving into ice-cold water after being in a warm, welcoming environment. The first thing I felt was pain, a sharp, pulsing pain that seemed to course through every inch of my body. It was a brutal shock after the peace and serenity we had experienced in the valley. I opened my eyes slowly, blinking against the daylight that seemed too blinding. The sky above me was clear, with no sign of the fierce storm that had hit us. How much time had passed? It felt like it had only been a few minutes, but at the same time, it felt like it had been gone for an eternity. With effort, I turned my head to the side. Eli was lying next to me, his eyes still closed but his chest rising and falling in rhythmic breathing. Relief flooded my being to see that he too had returned. "Eli," I called, my voice coming out hoarse and weak. "Eli, wake up." Slowly his eyes opened. I could see the same confusion and disorientation I felt reflected in his gaze. "Thorn?" he muttered. "Are we back?" I nodded, unable to contain the tears that were beginning to form. "Yes, little brother, we're back." We tried to sit up, but every movement was a Herculean effort. Our bodies felt heavy and clumsy after the ethereal lightness we had experienced. It was as if we had to relearn how to inhabit our physical form. I looked around, recognizing the field where we were before the storm. The large tree we took shelter under was there, but with a large burn mark on its trunk, a silent testament to the lightning that had struck us. "How long were we gone?" Eli asked, his voice still weak. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "It could have been minutes or hours." At that moment, we heard voices in the distance. Someone was shouting our names. I recognized our father's voice, filled with worry and fear. "Here!" I screamed with all the strength I could muster. "We're here!" Minutes later, which seemed like an eternity, we saw our parents running towards us, followed by some neighbors. Our mother's face was streaked with tears, and our father seemed to have aged years in a few hours. "My boys!" Our mother sobbed, falling to her knees beside us and hugging us tightly. "Thank God you're alive." Our father joined in the hug, his voice cracking with emotion. "We've been looking for you all night," he said. "When we saw the tree hit by lightning..." It was then that the reality of the situation hit me. We had been out for much longer than I realized. An entire night had passed while we were in the Valley of Peace. Neighbors were already calling for an ambulance, and we were soon involved in a rush of paramedics, questions, and rapid examinations. Eli and I exchanged a meaningful look amidst all the confusion. We knew we had experienced something extraordinary, something that would change our lives forever. On the way to the hospital, lying on the ambulance stretcher with Eli by my side, I allowed myself to reflect on everything we had experienced. The images of the Valley of Peace, the presence of the angel, the revelations about the interconnectedness of all things. It all felt as vivid and real as the physical world around me. But I could already feel the details starting to blur, like a dream that escapes you when you wake up. At the hospital, we underwent a battery of tests. The doctors were perplexed by our condition. Although we were struck by lightning, we did not have serious burns or significant internal damage. "It's a miracle," I heard one of them mutter as he looked at our CT scans. Eli was admitted for observation due to mild lung inflammation, but I was released after a few hours. Before going home, I went to his room. "How are you feeling?" I asked, sitting on the edge of his bed. Eli looked at me with eyes that seemed much older and wiser than his 14 years. "It's strange," he said quietly. "I miss that place, the peace we felt there." I nodded, understanding perfectly what he meant. "Me too," I confessed, "but I don't think it was our time to stay." "Do you think it was real?" Eli asked, a hint of doubt in his voice. "Or was it just, I don't know, something our brains came up with when we got hit?" I thought for a moment before responding. "I can't explain how or why it happened," he finally said, "but I know what we experienced was real. More real than anything I've ever experienced." Eli smiled, looking relieved. "I think so too," he said. "It's good to know I'm not going crazy." We laughed together, a laugh that carried relief, gratitude, and a shared understanding that went beyond words. In the days that followed, as Eli recovered in the hospital, I spent a lot of time reflecting on our experience. I tried to write down everything I remembered, afraid of forgetting the precious details. But some things seemed to resist translation into words. The sensations, the emotions, the deep truths we had glimpsed. Our parents noticed the change in us. We were quieter, more contemplative. When we finally told them what we had experienced, they listened with a mixture of amazement and concern. I'm not sure they completely believed it, but they respected how deeply the experience affected us. As the weeks passed and we returned to our normal routine, I realized that the experience had left permanent marks on us. It wasn't something we could just file away and forget about. It was as if we had received a new pair of eyes, a new way of seeing and understanding the world. The little worries that once seemed so important now seemed insignificant. Instead, I found myself focusing more on the connections between people, the beauty of simple things, the importance of each moment. Eli and I talked often about what we had experienced. Sometimes we compared our memories, trying to fill in each other's gaps. Other times we simply sat in silence, sharing an understanding that went beyond words. One night, about a month after the incident, Eli came to my room. He sat on the edge of my bed, his face serious in the lamplight. "Thorn," he said, his voice low but firm, "I think we have a mission." I nodded, immediately understanding what he meant. I had felt it too, a growing sense that we had returned for a purpose. The angel said our journey was not over, I remembered, that there was more for us to learn and understand. Eli agreed. "I feel like we need to share what we've learned," he said. "I don't know exactly how, but people need to know that there is more to life than what we can see and touch." I was silent for a moment, pondering his words. "It won't be easy," he said finally. "A lot of people won't believe us. They might even think we're crazy." Eli shrugged, a small smile on his lips. "Since when are important things easy?" he asked. I couldn't help but smile back. My little brother had grown so much these last few weeks. "You're right," I agreed. "I don't know exactly how we're going to do this, but I know it's important. It might be the most important thing we've ever done." That night, as Eli returned to his room and I prepared for bed, I felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. I knew the path ahead would not be easy. Sharing such a deep and personal experience with the world would be a huge challenge. But I also felt a deep certainty. What we had experienced in the Valley of Peace, the truths we had glimpsed about the interconnectedness of all things, the love and compassion we had experienced, these were things the world desperately needed. As I closed my eyes, I let my thoughts wander back to the Valley of Peace, to the comforting presence of the angel, to the feeling of oneness with all that is. And even though I was back in the physical world, with all its challenges and complexities, I felt a deep peace settle in my heart. It was then that a crucial memory emerged, something Jesus had told us during our encounter. His words echoed in my mind with surprising clarity. On October 1st, 2024, the earth will undergo a great judgment. It will be the beginning of a separation between the righteous and the impure souls. The weight of this revelation hit me full force. It was not just a personal experience that we had lived, but a warning for all humanity. I realized that part of our mission would be to prepare people for this event, although I didn't know exactly how we would do that. The date seemed far away at that moment, but I knew time would pass quickly. This revelation added a sense of urgency to our mission, an understanding that our actions in the coming years could have a significant impact on the future of humanity. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew Eli and I would face it together, and that somehow we would find a way to share the light we had experienced with the world, preparing it for what was to come. The months following our near-death experience were a roller coaster of emotions and discoveries. Eli and I found ourselves constantly arguing about how we could accomplish the mission we felt we had been given. How could we share what we had learned in a way that people could understand and accept? It wasn't easy. We tried telling our story to friends and family, but reactions ranged from polite incredulity to genuine concern for our mental health. Some suggested we seek psychological help, believing we were suffering from some type of post-accident trauma. "Maybe we should stop talking about this," Eli suggested one day after a particularly difficult conversation with our parents. "People are not ready to listen." I understood his frustration, but something inside me refused to give up. "We can't keep this to ourselves," I argued. "Remember what we felt there? The love, the connection to everything? People need to know that there is more to life than what we can see and touch." It was around this time that I started researching more about near-death experiences. To my surprise, I discovered that we were not alone. There were thousands of reports from people who had gone through similar experiences. Doctors and scientists were studying the phenomenon, trying to understand what happened during these moments between life and death. I shared my findings with Eli, and together, we began reading everything we could find on the subject. The more we learned, the more we became convinced of the importance of sharing our own story. "Maybe we can start small," Eli suggested one day. "How about a blog? We could write about our experience, but also what we're learning." The idea excited me. It was a way to share our story without forcing anyone to believe it. People could read it if they wanted, and perhaps over time we could reach others who have had similar experiences. This is how our blog, Beyond the Veil, was born. At first we were cautious, sharing only parts of our experience and focusing more on the research we were doing. But little by little, we gained confidence to tell our full story. To our surprise, the blog started to gain followers. People from all over the country and even from other countries started writing to us. Some shared their own near-death experiences. Others simply expressed gratitude that we had the courage to speak out about such a controversial topic. "You gave me hope," wrote one woman who had recently lost her husband. "The idea that he can be in a place of peace, that one day I can see him again. That means everything to me." Messages like this gave us the strength to keep going. Even when we faced skepticism and criticism, we realized that we didn't need to convince everyone. It was enough to touch those who were open to listening. Over time, our mission has evolved. It wasn't just about sharing our experience, but about fostering a broader understanding of life, death, and everything in between. We started organizing small discussion groups in our city, where people could talk openly about their beliefs, fears, and hopes related to death and the afterlife. Eli, who always dreamed of being a veterinarian, decided he wanted to study medicine. "I want to better understand the connection between body and soul," he told me. "Maybe it can help other people who have experiences like ours." As for me, I found myself increasingly interested in psychology and philosophy. I wanted to better understand the human mind, how we process transcendental experiences, and how this can change our perception of reality. Not everything was easy, of course. There were days when doubt crept in, days when I wondered if we weren't just deluding ourselves, if everything was just a hallucination caused by the trauma of the accident. But then I remembered the feeling of absolute peace we experienced in the valley, the loving presence of the angel, the deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. And I knew, deep down in my being, that what we experienced was real. One night, about 2 years after our experience, Eli and I were sitting on the roof of our house looking at the stars. It was a practice we had adopted, a time to reflect and reconnect with the sense of vastness and wonder we had experienced in the beyond. "Do you think we're making a difference?" Eli asked, his voice soft in the quiet night. I thought for a moment before responding. "I think so," he said finally. "Maybe not in the grand way we first imagined, but every person who finds comfort in our story, every conversation that helps someone see life from a new perspective, it makes a difference." Eli nodded, a small smile on his lips. "You know," he said, "sometimes I miss that place, the peace we felt there." "Me too," I admitted. "But I think part of our work here is to bring some of that peace to this world. Even if it's just in small moments, small gestures." We sat in silence for a while, gazing at the stars above. I thought about everything we had been through in the last few years, the lives we had touched, the changes we had experienced in ourselves. We didn't know what the future held for us. We didn't have all the answers, and we probably never would. But we were certain what we had experienced on that fateful day had changed our lives forever. And through our mission, we hoped we could change the lives of others too, even if it was in subtle ways.